Hello, I'm Vlassis Karathomas, and welcome to this edition of Campus Views, coming to you from the video production studio here on the campus of SUNY Cobleskill. This is a student-powered production of the spring 2020 semester and COMM 240 Introduction to Student Production class. Our guest today is Gregory Miller, and on this edition of Campus Views, our topic is what it's like being a graphic arts teacher. Thanks for joining us. How are you feeling today?
I feel great, Vlassis.
Great. So what was the main reason that you got into web design, digital imaging, like graphic arts as a whole?
Well, I grew up in the printing industry. My dad owned a printing company, so I actually started working in the shop when I was 14. Cleaned printing presses, taught myself how to do paste up and layout, ran printing presses, ran bindery equipment, and ultimately did everything that we used to do back in print media in the 1970s, because that's when that was.
So what's it been like seeing the industry change over time?
Well, okay. So I was in the print industry before computers, and I worked for USA Today newspaper in Norwich, Connecticut. And the last thing I did at that newspaper before I went to art school, because I didn't go to college until I was 26, was I converted their ad services, their advertising services department, because that's what I was. I was an ad services associate, to the first wave of Macintosh computers, which completely replaced our composition department, which was made up of 20 people. So we ended up, I'm not sure exactly what happened because I left after I did the switch over. And then when I was in college, I used Macs exclusively. My first job out of college, we were still only doing print. We were using digital imaging, digital type, all of that in the Mac environment, and then outputting it to analog photo printers. So if you know what an old photograph looks like that's actually created from a negative, we would actually run our layouts through a photo processor that would then be photographed again into a negative that would be burned to a plate that would be run on the printing press. So it changed, sea change, completely different. And then we moved into screen media with the internet, and web design became kind of a thing, and now it's everything. And it's not even web design. We don't call it that anymore. We call it interface design, because it's not limited to websites.
Yeah. Well, thanks to our guest, Gregory Miller, and we'll be right back with more Campus Views right after this. So stay with us.
No television or internet connections, no electricity, and in some DEC Adirondack campgrounds, no roads either. Forked Lake is just one of the 52 campgrounds that you can explore in the Adirondack Mountains of New York State. This facility is a primitive camping experience. Each site is outfitted with just the basics. You've got to hike trails or paddle a canoe to get to each site, putting you right in the middle of the area's natural beauty. Too rustic for you? That's okay. The DEC offers a wide variety of experiences, including island camping, tent and trailer sites with electricity and running water, boat launch facilities, hiking trails, beaches, and more. And it's all just a click away. To find out more and to start planning for your next Adirondack adventure, log on to www.dec.ny.gov. You'll find all the information you need to start enjoying the great Adirondack outdoors in upstate New York.
Hello, I'm Vlassis Karathomas, and welcome back to this edition of Campus Views from the video production studio here on the campus of SUNY Cobleskill. Again, our guest today is Gregory Miller, and we are talking about what it's like to be a graphic arts teacher on this edition of Campus Views. Thank you for staying with us. So, as a teacher in graphic arts design, do you have like a favorite class, or do you find anything that are hard to teach to some of the students?
Well, ultimately, our approach here is to teach designers and visual communicators all of the things that you need to communicate visually. It's a really important skill. If you're an accountant, it's an important skill. You have to know how to communicate visually. So to ask for a favorite, I don't really have one, but one thing I do like about our approach to interface design and development is that we produce students who can both design visually, but who can also develop by writing HTML, CSS, and JavaScript syntax. And that differentiates the graphic design technology program from many other design programs regionally and nationally.
Are there any struggles where it comes to teaching the material for students who are not at all familiar with it?
Well, I mean, the approach is that you always start with the basics, right? And I've joked with my students that I can teach anybody how to code. I can certainly teach anybody how to design, because that's something that a lot of people don't realize, is that design is a teachable skill. Visual acuity is something that can be learned. So I always try to put them at ease and say, you know, we're going to have a conversation in 6 weeks about HTML code that you couldn't imagine having with me right now.
So what's some advice that you would give to students going into the field?
Get into the process. The end result is the end result. But more important than what you actually make is the concept and the process that you do to make it. Being able to generate a concept and develop a concept, keeping track of what you're doing, so when you get to the point where you're going to execute it, which means shoot a photo, code a website, set up a layout in a layout software like InDesign, that you already know exactly what it is that you're building and you know why you're building it. And it's always based on the user. So that's what I would say to students is focus on the user and get into the process so you know what you're making.
Great. Well, thank you. That about wraps up our show here on Campus Views. I've been your host, Vlassis Karathomas, and thank you once again to our lovely guest, Gregory Miller, for taking the time out of the schedule to chat with us today. For more information or any questions for Gregory Miller, visit millergregory.com. And for more information about the 2- and 4-year communication programs here at SUNY Cobleskill, visit www.cobleskill.edu today. You can also find us on YouTube, Facebook, and Instagram. Just search for sunycobycomm on any of those platforms, and you can also just search #SUNYCobycomm as well. Once again, I'm Vlassis Karathomas, and thank you for watching this edition of Campus Views from SUNY Cobleskill.